We are standing at the crossroads of a new era, a time when being too nice is no longer an advantage, but a liability. In 2025, we need something more profound than mere politeness to thrive. The world calls for boldness, boundaries, and authenticity. Let's talk about what it really means to stop being too nice and start showing up as your true, courageous self. You see, being too nice often comes from a place of fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, and sometimes even fear of success. But in this new year, I want you to imagine what life would be like if you weren't afraid, if you could set boundaries without guilt, stand firm in your values without apology, and stop sacrificing your own needs for the comfort of others, ladies and gentlemen. We are standing at the crossroads of a new era, a time when being too nice is no longer an advantage, but a liability. In 2025, we need something more profound than mere politeness to thrive. The world calls for boldness, boundaries, and authenticity. Let's talk about what it really means to stop being too nice and start showing up as your true, courageous self. You see, being too nice often comes from a place of fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, and sometimes even fear of success. But in this new year, I want you to imagine what life would be like if you weren't afraid, if you could set boundaries without guilt, stand firm in your values without apology, and stop sacrificing your own needs for the comfort of others. Let me start by saying this. Niceness and kindness may look similar on the surface, but they couldn't be more different at their core. Niceness is often a mask we wear to avoid discomfort, conflict, or rejection. It's a learned behavior born from a desire to be accepted, liked, and included. Kindness, on the other hand, is something deeper. It comes from a place of integrity, courage, and genuine care for yourself and others. When you're nice, you prioritize keeping the peace, even if it costs you your own peace. You say yes to things you don't want to do because you fear disappointing someone. You smile when you feel hurt, nod when you disagree, and swallow your truth because you're afraid it might make someone uncomfortable. Niceness is reactive. It's about managing other people's emotions, often at the expense of your own. But kindness dares to be real. Kindness prioritizes honesty over approval. It's not about smoothing things over or avoiding conflict. It's about being true to yourself while respecting the other person. A kind person is not afraid to say, I love you, but I can't do this for you. They're not afraid to speak the truth, even when it's hard, because they know that real connection is built on honesty, not pretense. I think about this when you're nice, you might say yes to a request, even when you're already overwhelmed, just to avoid disappointing someone. But when you're kind, you might say, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now, but I care about you and want to support you in other ways. Do you see the difference? Niceness might make you seem agreeable in the moment, but kindness respects the long-term health of your relationships, including the one you have with yourself. Now, let's talk about the consequences of being too nice. When you're overly focused on pleasing others, you end up betraying your own needs and boundaries. Over time, this leads to exhaustion, resentment, and even bitterness. You might feel invisible, unheard, or unappreciated because you've spent so much time bending over backward for others without allowing yourself to take up space. And here's the heartbreaking part: being nice all the time doesn't guarantee that people will like or respect you. In fact, it often has the opposite effect. When you're too nice, people may start to take you for granted. They might see you as a pushover or someone who will always put their needs first. They might not even notice when you're struggling because you've trained them to see you as the person who never says no. This isn't because they're bad people. It's because you've never shown them the full, authentic version of yourself. But when you choose kindness over niceness, everything changes. Kindness allows you to show up authentically with both compassion and strength. It allows you to say no without guilt and to set boundaries without fear. Kindness is rooted in self-respect, and when you respect yourself, others are more likely to respect you too. This year, I challenge you to let go of the compulsion to be nice and embrace the courage to be kind. It's not easy. It will require you to be honest with yourself and others. It will require you to sit with the discomfort of saying no, the awkwardness of speaking your truth, and the vulnerability of being seen as you really are. but the reward is worth it. When you choose kindness, you give yourself permission to live a life that's true to who you are. You create space for deeper, more meaningful connections with others. And most importantly, you honor your own worth and dignity. So as you navigate 2025, remember this: being nice might make people like you, but being kind will make people respect you, and it will make you respect yourself. This is the year to stop hiding behind niceness and start living with kindness. It's the braver, more authentic path, and it's the one that will lead you to a life of integrity and freedom. Let's take a moment to recognize one of the most undeniable truths about being human. Your energy is not limitless. It's a finite resource, much like the battery on your phone. And just like your phone, if you don't recharge it, it will run out. Yet so many of us live as if we have an endless supply of energy to give to everyone and everything. And the cost of this mindset is burnout, frustration, and often a deep sense of emptiness. Think about how you spend your energy every day. You wake up, check your messages, respond to emails, run errands, fulfill work obligations, help others, and try to squeeze in time for friends and family. By the end of the day, you're drained. And here's the kicker: most of that energy wasn't even spent on things that genuinely nourish or fulfill you. You were too busy trying to keep up, please others, and meet expectations that may not even be your own. This is what happens when you forget that your energy is a precious and limited resource. When you're too nice, you give it away freely, often to people in situations that don't deserve it. You say yes to tasks you don't have time for. You invest emotional energy in people who take and take without giving back, and you spread yourself so thin that there's nothing left for you. Now, let's reframe this. Imagine that your energy is like money in a bank account. Every time you say yes to something, you're making a withdrawal. Every time you let someone take advantage of your time, you're losing currency. And just like with money, if you don't monitor your spending, you'll end up broke. The difference is when your energy account runs empty, you can't simply apply for a loan or get a bailout. You end up depleted physically, emotionally, and mentally. So how do you protect your energy? The first step is understanding that not everyone or everything deserves it. Think about that for a moment. You don't owe your energy to everyone who asks for it. You don't owe your time to every person who seeks your attention. And you don't owe your emotional labor to situations that don't align with your values or priorities. In 2025, let this be the year you become more intentional about where and how you spend your energy. Start by asking yourself a simple but powerful question: does this deserve my energy? If the answer is no, give yourself permission to walk away. It's not selfish, it's necessary. Let me be clear: saying no doesn't mean you don't care about others. In fact, it's the opposite. When you protect your energy, you're ensuring that you can show up as your best self for the people and causes that truly matter. You can't pour from an empty cup. And if you give everything away, you'll have nothing left to give when it really counts. Another important aspect of protecting your energy is understanding your limits. Too often, we equate busyness with productivity or worthiness, but constantly running on empty is not a badge of honor. It's a recipe for disaster. Recognize when you need to rest, recharge, and say no. Give yourself the grace to pause and prioritize your own well-being. Here's a practical way to think about it. Make a list of your energy depositors and withdrawers. Depositors are the people, activities, and habits that fill you up, whether it's spending time with loved ones, pursuing a hobby, exercising, or simply getting enough sleep. Withdrawers, on the other hand, are the things that drain you, like toxic relationships, overcommitting, or trying to meet unrealistic expectations. Once you identify these, start making conscious choices to invest more in your depositors and minimize the withdrawers. And let's talk about the guilt that often comes with protecting your energy. Many of us, especially those who struggle with being too nice, feel a sense of guilt or shame when we prioritize ourselves. But let me tell you this: your well-being is not optional. It's essential. If someone truly values and respects you, they will understand and honor your need to set boundaries. And if they don't, That's a sign they were more interested in what they could take from you than in who you are as a person. This year, I want you to see your energy as sacred. Treat it like the precious resource it is. Guard it fiercely, spend it wisely, and remember, the people and things that truly matter will never require you to sacrifice your peace, your health, or your happiness to keep them. Your energy is not infinite, but when you protect and nurture it, it becomes powerful. It allows you to create, connect, and thrive in ways you never thought possible. So as you move through 2025, let this truth guide you. Your energy is yours. Spend it intentionally, spend it well. When you hear the word boundaries, you might think of limitations, restrictions, or walls. But let me reframe it for you. Boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges. They are acts of love. Not just for others, but also for yourself. Setting boundaries is one of the most compassionate things you can do because it ensures that your relationships are built on mutual respect, authenticity, and care, not guilt, obligation, or resentment. Too often, people associate boundaries with selfishness or pushing others away. This couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, boundaries are about creating space where love, trust, and connection can thrive. Without boundaries, relationships often become imbalanced. One person ends up giving too much while the other takes without realizing the cost. Over time, this leads to frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. But with boundaries, there's clarity, balance, and a foundation of respect that allows everyone to flourish. Let's start with this truth. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. When you don't set boundaries, you send the message that your time, energy, and well-being are limitless. You inadvertently tell people that it's okay to take without asking, to demand without considering, and to expect without appreciating. But when you set clear and compassionate boundaries, you show others what you value, what you need, and how they can truly honor and support you. For example, imagine a friend who constantly calls you at all hours, expecting you to drop everything and listen to their problems. You love this friend, but over time, these late night calls begin to take a toll on your sleep, your work, and your own mental health. Without boundaries, you might keep answering the phone even when you're exhausted because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But let me ask you this, is that truly loving? Is it loving to let yourself suffer in silence while pretending everything is okay? Setting a boundary might sound like this: I care about you, and I want to be there for you. But I can't take calls late at night anymore because I need to prioritize my rest. Let's find another time to talk when I can be fully present for you. Notice the difference? A boundary doesn't shut the person out. It creates a space where both your needs and theirs can coexist. Here's the thing: boundaries require courage. They require you to be honest with yourself and others about what you can and cannot give. And yes, sometimes setting boundaries will make people uncomfortable, especially if they're used to you saying yes all the time. But discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're growing. Let's address the guilt that often comes with boundaries. Many of us, especially those who struggle with being too nice, feel guilty for saying no or for asking others to respect our limits. But guilt is not a reliable guide. Just because something feels uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. Remember this: when you set a boundary, you're not being mean, unkind, or selfish. You're simply acknowledging your humanity. You're saying, I care about you, but I also care about myself, and I believe our relationship can hold both truths. Boundaries are also an act of love for the people in your life. Without boundaries, relationships often become transactional. People take because they can, not because they truly value or understand what they're receiving. But when you set boundaries, you invite others to engage with you in a more meaningful way. You create opportunities for deeper connection, mutual respect, and genuine appreciation. Let me give you another example. Imagine you have a colleague who constantly interrupts your work with last-minute requests. If you keep saying yes, they might come to see you as someone who is always available, always willing, and always ready to drop everything for them. But if you set a boundary, like letting them know you need advance notice for non-urgent tasks, you teach them to respect your time. In doing so, you also encourage them to be more mindful and intentional about their own requests. Finally, boundaries are an act of love for your future self. When you protect your time, energy, and well-being today, you're ensuring that you have the capacity to show up for what truly matters tomorrow. You're creating a life that aligns with your values, your priorities, and your purpose. And that's not just loving, it's transformative. So as you navigate 2025, I want you to remember this: boundaries are not about rejection, they're about connection. They're not about shutting people out, they're about inviting them in on terms that are healthy, respectful, and sustainable for both of you. Setting boundaries is not easy, but it's one of the most loving and liberating things you can do. Love yourself enough to say, this is what I need. Love others enough to say, this is how we can thrive together. And trust that the people who truly care for you will honor your boundaries, not because they have to, but because they want to. That is the beauty and power of boundaries. They create space for love, respect, and authenticity to flourish. Let's take a moment to reflect on what it means to please others. On the surface, it may seem harmless, generous even. After all, doesn't it feel good to make someone else happy? To be agreeable, to say yes when asked for help, and to be seen as kind and accommodating? But here's the deeper truth: when your instinct to please others comes at the expense of your own needs, desires, and well-being, it becomes an act of self-abandonment. People-pleasing is not the same as being kind or helpful. True kindness comes from a place of authenticity. It's an act of giving without losing yourself in the process. People-pleasing, on the other hand, often comes from a place of fear of rejection, fear of being disliked, fear of confrontation, or fear of not being enough. It's not about what you genuinely want to do. It's about doing what you think others want from you. And every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you silence your voice to keep the peace, and every time you put someone else's needs above your own at the cost of your mental, emotional, or physical health, you abandon yourself. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you have a friend or family member who constantly asks for your help. They know you'll never say no, so they keep piling on the requests. At first, it feels good to be needed. But over time, you start to feel drained, resentful, and even invisible. Why? Because in your effort to be everything for them, you've become nothing for yourself. You've prioritized their happiness over your own, their needs over your well-being, and their approval over your peace. That's what self-abandonment looks like. It's the slow erosion of your own identity in service of others. Why do we do this? Why do we sacrifice so much to keep others happy? For many of us, people-pleasing is rooted in a desire to feel valued and accepted. We believe that if we're agreeable, accommodating, and always available, we'll be loved. But here's the painful irony: the more you abandon yourself to please others, the less you truly feel seen or appreciated. People don't respect what you're doing, they come to expect it. And instead of building genuine connection, you end up building relationships based on obligation, not authenticity. People-pleasing also sends a dangerous message to your subconscious that your needs don't matter, that your feelings aren't valid, and that your worth is tied to how much you can do for others. Over time, this erodes your self-esteem and creates a cycle of self-neglect. You stop asking yourself what you want or need because you're too focused on meeting everyone else's expectations. You lose touch with your own desires, passions, and dreams because you've been too busy living for others. But here's the truth that many of us need to hear: you don't need to please everyone to be worthy of love and respect. Your value is not determined by how much you can give, how agreeable you are, or how well you can avoid conflict. True connection, real, meaningful relationships comes from being your authentic self, not from twisting yourself into what you think others want you to be. Breaking free from people-pleasing starts with awareness. Begin by noticing the situations where you feel compelled to say yes, even when it doesn't feel right. Pay attention to the moments when you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I acting out of genuine care, or am I acting out of fear? The next step is learning to say no, and let me tell you, it's not easy at first. For those of us who have spent years or even decades as people pleasers, the word no can feel terrifying. We worry about disappointing others. about being seen as selfish or about losing relationships. But here's the truth: saying no is not selfish, it's self-preservation. It's a way of honoring your own needs, protecting your energy, and staying true to yourself. Start small. Practice saying no to things that don't align with your values or priorities. And when you do, remember that you don't owe anyone a lengthy explanation. A simple "I can't commit to that right now," or "that doesn't work for me," is enough. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel, and the more you'll realize that the world doesn't fall apart when you set boundaries. Another crucial step is reconnecting with yourself. When you spend so much time pleasing others, it can be difficult to even know what you want or need. Take time to reflect on your own desires, values, and priorities. What lights you up? What drains you? What are your non-negotiables? And the more you get to know yourself, the easier it becomes to make choices that honor your truth. Remind yourself that you are enough just as you are. You don't need to overextend yourself to be loved. You don't need to suppress your own needs to keep the peace. And you don't need to abandon yourself to make others happy. True love and respect come from authenticity, not from people pleasing. As you move through 2025, let this be the year you choose yourself. The year you stop abandoning your own needs to meet everyone else's. The year you learn that your worth is not tied to how much you can do for others, but to the simple and profound truth that you are already enough. People pleasing may feel like love, but it's not. Love begins with you, and it starts with the courageous act of refusing to abandon yourself. As we step into the opportunities and challenges of 2025, let this be the year you stop living for others at the expense of yourself. Being too nice may seem noble, but when it leaves you drained, unseen, and disconnected from your own truth, it's not kindness, it's self-neglect. Remember that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. True kindness comes from a place of strength, from knowing your worth and honoring your own needs just as much as you honor the needs of others. It's recognizing that being kind and being firm can coexist, that saying no when you need to is one of the most courageous and compassionate acts you can take. Your energy is not infinite, and it's okay to protect it. Boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges to healthier, more meaningful relationships. When you set boundaries, you're not pushing people away, you're creating space for love and respect to thrive.